So here's part 1 of the video solutions to our week 6 check for understanding. So section 3.2 was all about quadratic functions, and the first function we have here is f of x is equal to 2x squared minus 10x plus 4. And the first thing we'd like to do is find the vertex of the parabola. Now, the first thing to notice is that this parabola is not in standard form, and so to find its vertex, we have to use this formula that the x-coordinate of the vertex, h, is equal to the opposite of b over 2a. And so that would be the opposite of negative 10, which is 10, over 2 times 2, which is 4. So in other words, 10/4, or if you'd rather, 5/2. Okay, now to find k, which is the y-coordinate of the vertex, you have to plug in 5/2 into the equation of the parabola. So k would be equal to 2 times 5/2 squared minus 10 times 5/2 plus 4. And so let's go ahead and work that out. That's 2 times 25 over 4 minus 50 over 2 plus 4. If we distribute here, we have 50 over 4 minus 50 over 2 plus 4 over 1. And I'm just writing that as a fraction, getting ready for common denominator. So the common denominator is going to be fourths. So we'll multiply everything by 4. So don't let the fractions intimidate you. Focus on the process. The process is finding h, and then once you have h, plugging it into the formula, into the function to find k. All right, so we're almost there. So we have 50 over 4 minus 100 over 4 plus 16 over 4. And let's go ahead and work that out. So that's 50 minus 100 plus 16. That's negative 34 over 4, which you could leave like that, or if you wanted to, you could reduce that and rewrite that as 7/2. So our vertex is the point 5/2, comma, negative 17/2. So that's the vertex of the parabola. What's the equation of the axis of symmetry? Well, let's just go ahead and think about a quick sketch of this parabola. So it's going to have a vertex at 5/2, negative 17/2. So there's the vertex. We haven't found the x-intercept, so we're just going to do a sketch of what we think it might look like. Notice that this number is positive, and so the parabola goes upward, all right? And the axis of symmetry is this vertical line right here. Now this is the point 5/2, comma, negative 17/2. So what's the equation of this vertical line? The vertical line has an equation x equals, because it's a vertical line, and what does x equal? 5/2. So the answer for B is x is equal to 5/2. Find the x-intercepts. Another word for the x-intercepts are the roots of the polynomial. So the roots, the x-intercepts, or in other words, the roots, are where the function is equal to 0. So we need to solve this equation. 0 is equal to 2x squared minus 10x plus 4. Now we could pause and see if we could factor it, or we could go straight to the quadratic formula. In either event, what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide everything by 2 just to make the numbers smaller. Whether you use the numbers as they are right now in the quadratic formula, or whether you divide by 2, we're going to get the same answer. So 0 is equal to x squared minus 5x plus 4. The reason I chose to do that division also was now I think I can tell that I could factor this. I don't really have to use the quadratic formula, because this would factor as x minus 4, x minus 1 equals 0. Let's just check that. Negative 4x minus 1x is negative 5x. So yes, that's how it factors. And so now we can find the intercepts. We just set each of those equal to 0 and solve. So if x minus 4 is equal to 0, that tells us x is equal to 4. And if x minus 1 is equal to 0, that tells us x is equal to 1. So the intercepts are at the points 4, 0 and 1, 0. The y-intercept. The y-intercept is the point where x is equal to 0. So to find the y-intercept, let's just squish it in here. The y-intercept, to find that, we're going to find f of 0. So f of 0 would be equal to, if we come back and look at the function, that's 2 times 0 squared plus or minus 10 times 0. So far we have 0 plus 4. And that's equal to 4. So the y-intercept is going to be the point 4, 0. And finally, find the domain and range. So we know that the domain of any quadratic function is always a set of all real numbers. So the domain, I'm running out of room, so let me just squish it here. The domain is a set of all real numbers because it's a quadratic function. Now remember, for the range, what we're looking for is where does the function start along the y-axis going from low to high? Well, remember, the vertex has a y-coordinate there of negative 17 halves. So the range is going to start at negative 17 halves and go to infinity. So that's everything we could do with the equation of a parabola. Here, let's try the next one. Solve 5x squared plus 6x equals negative 2. So to solve, we want to make one side equal to 0. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And then we want to solve. Now we could take a moment to see if it factors, but since so few quadratics do factor, why don't we go ahead and just go straight to the formula. So a is the number in front of x squared, b is the number in front of x, c is the constant. B squared is 36. 4ac is 4 times 5 times 2, which is 40. And 2a is 2 times 5, which is 10. So now we can go straight into the quadratic formula that says our roots are, answer is, x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So let's go ahead and simplify that. That's negative 6 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 divided by 10. We know that the square root of 4 is 2 and the square root of negative 1 is I. So we have negative 6 plus or minus 2i over 10. And the finishing touch is to factor the greatest common factor in the numerator. So that would be 2 times negative 3 plus or minus I over 10. And we know that 2/10 is the same as 1/5. So we have negative 3 plus or minus I over 5. Okay, more answers coming in the next part of the video.